What's up, you guys? We are here for our Saturday night secret sermon. This is the Secret Teachings of Jesus episode of the week, one of my favorite segments, and I think that it's very popular with our crowd here as well. So I am basically delving into the Gnostic Gospels, the Lost Gospels, and all that. We've been in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. I always wanted to read them, and I am not good at making time to just sit and read. So I thought it'd be a great idea to just make this a weekly episode that we could all read these together. So basically, I usually work on Saturday night. So I come in from work and I pick out a portion that's standing out. And then I start getting downloads and I just turn on the camera and we start. So, the portion this week falls right in, I think, with last week. We had a 3-part series, kind of, with one of the portions entitled, well, we're in the Gospel of Philip, by the way. One of the portions entitled Creation Through a Mistake. There was just so much to say, and when I thought it was just, like a typical 1-week episode, and then I started thinking about it more through the week, and I remembered things that I wanted to say, and so we did a part 2, and then I still felt like there was like more that I wanted to say, and so then we did a part 3, and so then this portion kind of like dovetails on that. It also relates to a piece of Genesis that I was reading today. And I'll show you guys this because it's can't pick it up. I'm like duct taped together. I've had like all the pollen is in the air. I don't usually take a medicine. I took a Mucinex for work and some kind of allergy pill. So I'm loopy, and then I was in the large party room tonight, but it was like regular dinner service, and so I just had like 3 parties of like large parties of like older adults that don't like listen to you when you're talking to them, and then they ask you questions and they don't listen to the answers, and they're very needy, but they all sat down at the very same time. So I basically had all of my covers, which we call each person. All of my reservations came in at exactly the same time. And so basically I was like running a marathon for hours. So I'm pretty much exhausted. That, and we've had all of these like tornado and weather alarms going off through the night for like the last several days. So like I'm insane. Okay, so I love this Bible that I found. It comes in different volumes. So the Tanakh is basically what I've got so far. I'm not sure if this guy has done the New Testament, but this is the Hebrew translation with 3-line segments, and I love it. And it's so interesting. I don't speak Hebrew, but when you read the verses, they're arranged in such a way where you can see the Hebrew letters and you scan those because your soul connects to those. It doesn't matter if you can understand it. And then the Hebrew words are spelt out phonetically with English letters, so you can pronounce the words. And it's interesting too because as I've been reading, instead of just like not reading the Aramaic, I have been reading the Aramaic, and because of that, I've been able to pick out certain words that stand out. Like certain words, I know what they mean. And then because of certain words' repetitiousness, I've been able to learn like very basic, rudimentary, some of the words, like I've been able to recognize which ones they're referring to. So that's been pretty cool. But what I was going to get at is that by reading the Aramaic, it's given me even more insight into the translation, not just in sort of like a surface level, like, oh, this word relates to this and that, which I was expecting, and that's why I wanted this Bible, but also like the deeper insights that I get, like the downloads that I get when I do these. So it's very interesting, not surprising though, that's the way the Holy Spirit can move through. It's so powerful. But also, just having been doing this project recently about the secrets of the Psalms, I've been picking out certain Psalms that feel really relevant for the day and doing shorter videos on those. And so the Psalms you can use as prayers for that are good for different areas and different challenges and different purposes. And so there's one psalm that is the psalm to protect oneself from poverty. Well, obviously, in our current economic downslide, it's been a popular psalm for people to learn about. And I have been saying it like before work every day that I can remember, or that I have time to do it. And it's those days I go in and the restaurant is unusually busy, or we get more people walking in than we had reservations. So like we get unexpectedly busy, and I haven't made below like a certain amount of money on the nights that I've said that psalm before I go in. So you can go find my Secrets of the Psalms playlist on my channel, and they're usually just my shorts. They're usually under 3 minutes, but the ones that I have that have gone over 3 minutes, I've also released those as like regular videos, but they're in that playlist. But what I noticed is that the book that I have been learning the different uses from is called Secrets of the Psalms, and they include the King James version of the Psalms within the book. And I don't really like the King James translation of the Bible. Anytime some white person, especially like a very privileged one, like a king, decides they want to do their own translation of the Bible, it usually tells me that there's a motive in that serves not the original purpose. So I've always been very wary of the King James version. And for good cause, because when you can listen, you can go look for the first time I did this video. It's the Psalm 72, Psalm for Protection Against Poverty. You can see the title in this description and on the thumbnail. I'm wearing like a mustard brown shirt. The first time I read it out of the King James version, and the context is so sort of cold and disconnected, and you can tell the psalm is supposed to be for the sake of the needy and the poor, but it doesn't sound like that at all. And the way it sounds like heavy-handed, and it's weird. And so I was like, well, I mean, it's esoteric, so I guess, we'll just use this prayer anyway, and it worked. But the thing is that when I read it the second time, I did a second video today, reading out of the Hebrew version. See, they come in different, so there's the prophets volume and the writings volume, Psalms, and the Torah. When I read it out of this version, it was a completely different tone and context, and it was way more compassionate and more pro poor people rather than pro king and rich people. So like you can do a side-by-side comparison for yourself, but I love this set of Bibles that I've got. I don't have an affiliate link or anything. You can just go look them up yourself. So I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm just trying to tell you that this is a wonderful, really true translation, and it's the one that I've been looking for. Like I knew it was out there, and I finally found it. Okay, so tomorrow I have a party that I'm going to for my niece. It's her book release party. She released her first book of poetry. And so that's in the morning. And I think I'll have time to come home between work. And I might do a video about what I was learning at Genesis, or what I was picking up from Genesis today. Because it ties into the Passover lecture I was also listening to today. So if I have time tomorrow, I will make y'all a video about that portion of Genesis, because we talk so much about Genesis in these secret teachings of Jesus videos. We almost always reference the Garden of Eden and the sin of Adam and the fall of mankind. So I think that is interesting to go back into Genesis and start teaching from that as well. Okay, so we're going to start this portion. I will read it out loud to you a couple of times. It'll probably be choppy at first, and then it'll get more smooth. And then we'll unpack it line for line, and we'll go back if there's any kind of like footnotes or anything. I will tell you ahead of time that like the third line in, there is text missing. So it gives you like these ellipses. And sometimes I can like channel and kind of figure out what maybe was there. So that's going to be a choppy part that we get to. But when we go back and unpack it, I'll tell you what I think what it said and what it's talking about. Okay, so this portion is called bring forth like. A horse brings forth a horse. A human brings forth humans. A deity brings forth deities. So also bridegrooms and brides come from the bridegroom and bride. No Jews, ... from Greeks, ... from Jews, ... to Christians. There was another generation of people, and these blessed people were called the chosen spiritual ones. True humanity, the child of humanity, and the offspring of the child of humanity. This true generation is renowned in the world, and this is where the attendants of the bridal chamber are. Okay, we'll read this one more time, and then we'll talk about what we think it means. Okay, a horse brings forth a horse. A human brings forth humans. A deity brings forth deities. So also bridegrooms and brides come from the bridegroom and bride. No Jews from Greeks, from Jews to Christians. There was another generation of people, and these blessed people were called the chosen spiritual ones. True humanity, the child of humanity, and the offspring of the child of humanity. This true generation is renowned in the world, and this is where the attendants of the bridal chamber are. Okay, so last week we were talking about offspring and the incorruptibility of the offspring. So a horse brings forth a horse, a human brings forth humans, and a deity brings forth deities. Last week we talked about how Jesus said flesh comes from flesh, flesh is born of flesh, and spirit is born of spirit. And so we begin as flesh. We are flesh born of flesh, and we have this ego mind, and we have a veil drawn, and we don't have that full awareness and remembrance of the wholeness of our spirit and the perfection of our spirit. We have a layered, multidimensional soul that has corrections to do. And so every layer of negativity that is built up around our soul is like adding to that veil that obscures our memory and our full union with God, full union with our own divinity, with our humanity. So Jesus was the perfect example of what it could be like to be human when one awakens and remembers their divinity. Jesus was the example of a person or an individual who was both fully human and fully divine in that awakened sense, living in that remembrance of who he really was. So a horse brings forth a horse. So in order, so flesh born from flesh and spirit is born from spirit. So in order to tap into that divine part of ourself, it's like we have to be reborn a new creature. We have to be reborn in spirit. In order to awaken that part of our higher mind so that we can transcend our lower carnal mind. The carnal mind is the mind that drives us by our instincts and our desire to receive for the self alone, our desire to take, our lusts, our grabbiness, our greed, our lust for power and sex and money and resources and safety and guarantees and certainty. But our higher mind can trust beyond and transcend beyond logic and reason and be in a realm of the miraculous. And miracles don't really flow with reason and logic. They're miracles. They don't make sense a lot of the time. So in order to understand the teachings of the Christ, the inner teachings, like half the people didn't even understand. And this is what we're running into as we see today. People still don't understand even Jesus's simplest, straightforward teachings, let alone his deeper esoteric teachings that he reserved for only a precious few who could even have hope to understand what he was trying to relay to them. So he was talking to the high priests of the temple in a situation where he's trying to explain like being reborn, born again. And they're like, surely you don't mean that I have to go up inside my mother and actually be born again. She's dead. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, you're the ones, you're the teacher of teachers. Like, you're the ones like in charge and you don't even understand this concept. So it was like, they were so literal. They were so like clinging to like this like materialistic understanding, right? So he was trying to tell them, look, if you're going to understand my teachings and you're going to be like have the spiritual awakening, you have to be reborn in spirit and die to your old understanding and then start to die to your old egoic self that's going to cling to selfishness and survival and greed and lust for power. And, you know, in order to really align with these higher concepts, these higher virtues, you're going to be contested with yourself. You're going to have to come up against yourself when it might mean that you have to leave behind some of your material comforts or life as you know it. Or what if this threatens your position in your community or your church, right? Or like your position of power within the temple. It's like people weren't willing to like step outside of the norm that they were used to and enlighten themselves and expand their belief and their openness to these truths, because it meant that what they had collected and what they felt like they owned and had control over would be contested and challenged. They might lose their position. They might lose their, if Jesus is telling people that the temple of God is within you, then they're not going to, no one's going to need to bring sacrifices to the temple. If you're going to be worshiping in spirit and truth anywhere and going into your own closet and shutting the door and pray by yourself, well then who needs the priests, the high priests, right? Who needs the temple and their whole ecosystem and careers and everything they do is built on that system, that culture, right? So it threatens people's current human, materialistic, egoic reality, their possession of things, their ownership of things, their own sense of self-righteousness. We have to be able to let those things go. It doesn't mean that we can't have blessings and things like that, but we can't cling to those before we cling to the truth, before we cling to higher wisdom, before we cling to wanting to become more like God. When we want to become more like God and we're willing to sacrifice anything for that, then that's when the other blessings are added to you, because you don't need them anymore. They don't own you. They don't hold dominion over you. You have been transcended that and become sovereign in your spirit. So having set that foundation, we go back to the portion. So a horse brings forth a horse. A human brings forth humans. And deity brings forth deities. Now, why are we suddenly talking about a horse? Like an animal brings forth an animal? Yeah, obviously. And a human brings forth human. And they're not just talking about like one species giving birth to that species. This is like talking about consciousness. So, when you are taking, for instance, the living creatures of the apocalypse, you've got the bull, which represents the carnal mind. You have the man, which represents humanity. You have the eagle, which represents the higher mind. And so in this case, the horse is an example of that lower carnal animalistic instinct. But it's more than just a beast of the field, right? It's more than just like any random animal. The horse is a domesticated animal. The horse is put to service for human beings. We ride the horse, right? It kind of represents our willpower and our drive and our own personal will. But the horse can also represent like a domesticated beast, which is, to me, one of the insights I was getting from Genesis today was that the domesticated beast is almost like trained for our purpose of yielding a service to us or sustenance or security. It serves a purpose. And so it's almost like our subconscious conditioning, our instincts that we think that our ego tells us, like, you know, those subconscious defense mechanisms that think that they're keeping you safe, right? Because your egoic mind, your lower mind, your animal mind, your carnal mind believes that it has to be in charge in order for you to eat and to survive. So it's like, I'm providing for you. I'm keeping you safe. I'm keeping you fed. I'm keeping you, in a job, breaking bread. I'm the provider. I'm the protector of you. That is the lower mind that causes us to live usually in the states of reactivity to our fears and our lusts and our hunger and our desperation, right? And so anytime those things get triggered, it's like we're under the control of the thing that triggers us until we transcend those things and we have self-control and we have cosmic sovereignty. So the carnal mind brings forth a carnal, lower thinking, unconscious person who's driven by their subconscious beliefs and their subconscious fears and their unconscious defense mechanisms, right? And that is what drives their will and their willpower. And depending on how attached we are to those beliefs, that can mean that we have like the strongest will and stubbornness to like stick and cling to those behaviors and the things that we do and the beliefs that we have that we think on an unconscious level are keeping us safe or keeping us alive, or keeping us provided for, that keep us moving forward. Okay, so the human brings forth humans. So this is like that whole flesh born from flesh. It's like we take everything materially. We're mortal. So it's like this isn't the human that understands beyond mortality. We're thinking of life in terms of this is it. And we have to go to work and make sure that we take care of everything, and we get lost in the mundane. We work and we think about, okay, well, can I take a vacation? Can I go out to eat? And this is like how we distract ourselves in our, attempts to entertain ourselves. And we don't spend the time really diving into our soul and doing the deep inner work and understanding the secrets of the scriptures, because we are like, what's the point? This is all there is, right? And when we die, that's it. So I think that would be like the mortal, the human brings forth humans. And it's think about the school of thought, like humanistic people, humanism. They're like stuck on this material plane, and they kind of take everything at surface level. And a lot of times these people are like atheists or agnostics, and they don't believe in an afterlife and they don't believe in a God. They just think that science and like here is all we have, which I totally love science and I love quantum physics and all of that. But I think that is the bridge. I think that's the way that God manifests in this material realm. It's like, just because you know the recipe for the cake doesn't make the cake less good, right? So it doesn't make the cake less of a cake just because you know the recipe, right? So a deity brings forth deities. So it's like God begot his son, Jesus, who was a deity. He was a living God walking the earth in physical form. Whereas God, Hashem, the God of Abraham, has no form, has no face. He is unfathomable. I mean, we say him just because that makes it easier to talk about. But God, in God's ultimate wholeness and oneness, is completely abstract. And the best we can do is think of God as the pure light, a light that has consciousness, a light that has organization and genius and creativity and love and sharing. But ultimately, the light is like the whole of everything that is. Everything is in the light. It's like white light that has all the colors of the spectrum within that white light. It's just when you shine it through a prism, then you get the rainbow, where each of the different vibrational differences of the hues are separated, and you can see the differentiation of the colors. But the white light contains everything, all that is. So the light of the creator, that energy, that is the energy that makes everything in the world. So everything in the world is made of the light of the creator, and we are in the light of the creator, and the light of the creator is in us. In him we live and move and have our being. So the light is the universe. The light is the light that animates us to life. The light is in the breath that we inhale and exhale. The light is in the things that we can't see, feel, and touch, like our spirit, our soul, our consciousness, our awareness. It's in the angels and the miracles, right? The light is unembodied, but then is channeled through. Like, we're all vessels of the light, right? And the things that we do, our talents, are channels for the light. And the best we can do is make ourselves more like the light, so we become better channels of that, bringing that light through into the world, through our own unique expression. So let's see. A horse brings forth a horse. A human brings forth humans. A deity brings forth deities. So God beget a divine son who it was a gift to us to see in a physical form what it would be like if we became fully like God in our incarnation here on earth. We would become like Jesus. We would have his virtue and his consciousness, and we would behave like him, and we would do the things that he did, particularly if we were that awakened to our higher mind, like the pineal gland, if we were fully capable of opening that inner eye and making that connection super clear and strong and unencumbered, decalcifying our pineal gland and making a regular practice of connecting with it, then we would be completely light-filled, and we would be able to do the miracles that Jesus did. Even greater is what he promised us. So like, totally. Okay, so also bridegrooms and brides come from the bride and the bridegroom and bride. So what is the bridegroom? That is Jesus. That is the Christ. That is the revelation of the light of God. That is the masculine coming into the feminine. We are the vessels that receive. So we are all the bride of the bridegroom, right? As humanity, we are vessels waiting to receive the light of the Creator. So in order to receive that light of the Creator, we have to become resonant with that light, to become more like it, so that we have vibrational resonance, so that we can draw close to that light and unify with it and connect with it. So that unification of our spirit into our flesh and like the perfection of our soul, where we can finally behave like we need to and think like we need to and have the consciousness that, is pure and perfected, that those moments that we can glimpse that every once in a while if we could get to that perfect state, that is that holy union with God, where we are in nirvana, where it's like we're in a perfect state of bliss. And it's many times it is when we have no thought in our mind. Our mind is completely empty, free of thought. Okay, so also bridegrooms and brides come from the bridegroom and bride. So people who seek out this union with God and they want to transcend their ego and awaken and perfect their soul and unite themselves in their spirit so that they are expressing that spirit fully in the world, they would be the bride receiving the bridegroom. It's the sacred, holy, alchemical marriage. Now, this portion, no Jews from Greeks, from Jews to Christians. So what I think it says is no Jews come from Greeks, but from Greeks from Jews, but Greeks maybe come from Jews, and from Jews to Christians, because this is what was happening during the time of like the Greek occupation and the Greek like rule over the Jewish people. What happened was the Greeks didn't necessarily forbid the Jewish people from their worship, but they interrupted the purity of their rituals and defiled their oils. So they made their ritual impure, meaning they started to leak their Greek beliefs and their Greek myths and their Greek ways of doing things into the Greek culture, into the Jewish culture. So they sort of infiltrated the Greek or the Jewish people over time. So that even if there was a sincere Jew that wanted to worship and do the rituals correctly, they wouldn't be able to, because the true practices and the true religion and the true rituals would have been lost to antiquity. So there were a few people who tried to hold on to the precious purity of the practices and of the the whole calendar of the Jewish people is based on following the zodiac, and then it's based around the moon cycles, right? So think about, if you can't keep up with any of that, then you can't hold your rituals in the right time. Well, the rituals, the dates matter because these are specific openings in like cosmic gates that allow for specific energy to be available during certain times of the year that aren't available in other times of the year. There is precise names of God to be used, and prayers to be prayed, and foods to help you make connections, and there are certain foods to be avoided at certain times. So if we don't know the right things to do at the right time, then sometimes our connections aren't as effective as they could be. That's why Kabbalah is so particular about going deep into the spiritual technology of why we do these rituals. It's not just to remember these events and to keep the tradition and to keep the culture alive, but these are actual like spiritual openings where we are connecting with God in such a way that we are connecting to that light. The bride is the bridegroom. And there's a certain way to do that. And so it got to a point even after the Maccabees overthrew the Greeks and won their freedom back, there were still a lot of Jews living around Greece, and there was still a lot of Greek influence on a huge mass of the Jewish people. They were called Hellenistic Jews. So they had started to take on some of the myths and the practices of the Greek people, and it started to like muddy their own traditions and beliefs. And so the other more orthodox schools of Judaism were like, like they're getting all watered down, like Hellenistic Jews are like being overly influenced by the Greek culture. So it's saying like Jews don't come from Greeks, but then Greeks are suddenly coming from Jews. Like we're becoming more Greek than Jewish all of a sudden. We need to go back to like preserving our belief system. But during the time of Jesus, he was trying to reform and perfect the Jewish faith, bring it further than what they'd come to. He was bringing the completion of the faith. It wasn't just about mitzvahs and sacrificing at the temple and keeping Jewish law. It was about having this spiritual awakening and treating people not so black and white and kind of harshly at times, living to the letter of the law, but like opening up. And then also Jews kept to themselves. They did not intermingle with the Gentiles. And so Jesus first wanted to bring his message to the Jewish people and then have it spread out over time. But it was the Gentiles that were the ones who were the most open and fast to catch on. When they would overhear the teachings, they were like, yeah, let's do this. They were the ones that received the miracles because they had full faith and they believed. And so did a lot of Jewish people. But at the time, a lot of the organizations of the Jewish people, like the church leaders, the Pharisees, they were like, okay, this is kind of coming up against our tradition. Like, this is threatening our positions in the church. Like, they didn't like it because it shook what they thought they owned, their position of power. But not all. Like, some of the Pharisees saw that Jesus actually was the Messiah. They believed in him. So Jesus came to perfect the Jewish faith and bring it into like this fuller completion. So that was the part that says, and from Jews to Christians. It was like we are transcending and evolving from like Jewish people to Christians. And this is the Gospel of Philip was written after the fact, after Christ was doing his mission. So when Christ was going around, I'm not sure if he was talking about Christianity, because he was Jewish, and so were all of his disciples. But then they evangelized afterwards, and the Christian movement, the Christian faith started to be born in the early centuries. So there was another generation of people, and these blessed people were called the chosen spiritual ones. True humanity, the child of humanity, and the offspring of the child of humanity. So, the spiritual chosen ones. Okay, so if we are souls that have been reincarnated again and again and again, and we have multiple lifetimes to transcend and correct our tikkun, which is like our soul contract. It's like the challenges that we have, the personality flaws, like the negativity we've built up over lifetimes. It's our positive things that we've revealed about ourselves as well. It's our gifts that we need to reveal and our potential that we need to tap into. So when you hear the word Israelites, right? Israelites were God's chosen people. This is not talking about people from Israel. It has nothing to do with like countries' borders or politics or Hebrew nationalism or anything like that. The Israelites are God's chosen people who keep the covenant with God and who try to perfect their vessel to be more like God so that they can be united with him. And by the only way to perfect that vessel is to correct the original sin of Adam, which caused mankind to fall into this material world. Whereas before, during the Garden of Eden, they were like in this space between the endless unmanifested reality where God was absolutely abstract, and then God condensed into a consciousness that wanted to share. And so when creation was first made, it wasn't in the material world yet. It was in a non-physical state, and they were like light beings. They were immortal. They were in this perfect paradise world. But then after the sin of Adam, that is when the ego made its appearance, and that was too heavy. The shame caused them to fall and become flesh, and we became mortal. After we ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he said, "This will kill you. This will surely make you die." And it didn't instantly, but over a lifetime, instead of being immortal, like, we have to die now. We have to age. We have pain and suffering and childbirth, and we have to go to work, and we have to break our wheat to make bread. And before that, it wasn't so. And so the sin of Adam is that heaviness, that material that we all get a little piece of in our soul to correct for lifetime after lifetime. So collectively, we all came from the source soul of Adam, and we've all splintered off from there. And so we all have a bit of that original sin, so to speak, where we missed the mark, or we went off path, that we're trying to get back to that original connection. This has to do with there's more concepts to talk about. That's why I want to go more deeper into this tomorrow, if I can make that video, and go into the lecture that I was listening to today about Passover, because it's just too much to talk about all in one video. But if you just accept what I'm saying, the sin of Adam is something that we're all still correcting for. So as souls, as this group of souls, the chosen ones, Israelites, were chosen to correct for the sin of Adam. And they would come here lifetime after lifetime trying to do this again and again. They kept getting it wrong. God kept having to wipe the slate clean and restart the world. And so the first time was when God destroyed the world in a flood by Noah, in Noah's time. At that point, there was people were out of control in their sexual lusts, and they were getting all this energy from doing really perverse things. I can't remember reading the details. I feel like there's probably bestiality involved and all kinds of perverted things. And so then the next time that God had to kind of destroy people and kind of reset them and start them over was with the Tower of Babel. And that's the second time they broke the covenant, and they fucked it up. Humanity was doing good, and they went and it started getting fucked up again. And so with the Tower of Babel, they got all high on their horses, and they thought, you know what, if we join together in unity, we can build a tower all the way up to heaven, and then we can get to heaven that way, and we don't have to do the work for ourselves. Now, what this is they were figuring out how to use Hebrew Kabbalah, basically, but as sorcery. And so they were trying to get all their blessings and manifest, so to speak, and get everything they wanted through magic for free, and not having to change in order to receive that blessing because God blessed you with it. Not wanting to align themselves with God's path or God's will, but they figured out how to cheat the system. And because they were so unified, and unity gives you power, they figured out all the right rules and they bypassed the system. This is why God warned Moses, don't break the mixed multitude, don't break the Babylonians, because they're going to take your sacred knowledge and they're going to use it for their own means. And this is why you see different types of Kabbalah. You'll see Hebrew Kabbalah, you see Hermetic Kabbalah. And Hermetic Kabbalah is related to Egyptian magic, which is related to the Tower of Babel, which is all about do what thou wilt, and it has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with becoming closer to God or godlier. Or purification of the soul. It's just about getting what you want. It's all about material gain and receiving for the self, taking for the self, taking for the self. So they got too advanced. And so God caused them all to suddenly speak different languages, so they couldn't have the unity anymore. They were confused and they were babbling to one another, and it undermined the power that they were getting too powerful. So then the third time that his chosen people had another chance to reincarnate and correct the sin of Adam so that we could all be in paradise again as immortals was what we celebrate as the Exodus from Egypt. And so in this case, these souls knew they were a chosen group. They knew they were going to come and incarnate. And they knew that they were going to be in slavery, and they knew that they were going to have to suffer and to have to find their way out of that and choose their own sovereignty. But the thing is, the Israelites, they got used to Egypt. They were like, the food's good, we have a good solid job, like we know what to expect. Why don't we just stay here? And you're asking us to just go out into the wilderness with like no supplies, like what are we going to do? How are we going to make a living? It's kind of like thinking about having to be putting yourself in an immigrant's shoes who's escaping persecution, and having to just suddenly uproot their entire life, leave everything behind, and go to another country and start over in a language they don't understand, not knowing how they're going to take care of themselves. Not everybody is courageous enough to do this, to leave their comfort zone like that. And so the Israelites, a portion of them did leave Egypt in the Exodus. Not all of them, though. Only a portion. And some of the other people in Egypt were like, we're going to come with you. We don't want to stay here. We're going to go. So it's so funny, too, because when they were in the wilderness, every time they got tired, every time they got sick of their manna, every time they, just got like uncomfortable, they would start complaining, bemoaning it. They were like, why don't we just go back to Egypt? Like the Pharaoh will take us back. He wants the labor. Like we can say we're sorry. Like we'll at least have like something, they couldn't stand they didn't have the threshold for the uncertainty. So that's why they were like so plagued in the wilderness. It took them 40 years before they found the promised land. Because they weren't fully committed to just leaving Egypt behind and going forward into a new life and believing with certainty that the Creator had a plan and that they were going to be reborn into these new creatures. And they weren't going back to slavery. They were like indecisive about it. They hadn't just fully like decided with all of their conviction that this is it and there's no turning back. So that's what kept them sort of like wandering this wilderness for 40 years. Okay, so these are the chosen ones. So there was another generation of people, and these blessed people were called the chosen spiritual ones. True humanity, the child of humanity, and the offspring of the child of humanity. Now, God loved the Israelites. He loved them so much that he was like, no, you're my people. Like, you're my souls that I keep sending here. And I know that you can do this. I know that you can return to me and be in full perfection again. You just have to go through the stages to correct yourself before you wreck yourself. And like we've gone into descriptions of correction and all that stuff in other videos. So we're already getting long. So I don't want to go into that detail where we might have to do like if I get to do this Genesis video tomorrow, that will help elaborate on things. So within these chosen people, there were these amazing prophets and kings that came forth and were like titans among men, and they really like had the consciousness, and they had prophecy, and they had the ability to wield these their ability to channel miracles through. But it was from those people that those prophets came from, right? And so it says the chosen spiritual ones, the true humanity, and the child of humanity. Now, Son of Man, who is that? That's Jesus. Jesus is talked about throughout the whole Old Testament. It's always this preview of what's to come. It's either prophecies about the coming Messiah, or it's references that they might not even be aware that they are already setting the stage for him to be there. And even in early parts of Genesis, there was an early verse where God refers to himself in the plural. When we were here in the beginning, it was already implying that Jesus was already there. It was already a part of this. And so, yeah, there's, I think, what is it, the 144,000? Like, supposedly there are always a certain amount of high souls, like righteous souls here on earth, that maintain the balance so that we don't tip the scales into total darkness. So these souls are like the chosen souls who are holding the light and holding the lamps for others, and they're living as righteous people. And they may not necessarily be in the spotlight, but they are these pure souls and righteous souls and prophetic souls that are here holding the torch for humanity until the end comes. They're always here in every generation. So the child of humanity, the offspring of the child of humanity. And, you know, you get these like kings and generations of kings and things that come from these bloodlines, right? Like King David was from the tribe of Judah, and Jesus was related to King David. Samuel anointed King Saul, and then King Saul lost his favor with God, and then Samuel anointed David, and then from the Davidic bloodline, that Jesus was born of that bloodline, which had a mixed multitude within that bloodline too. There were like prostitutes and Gentiles in Jesus's family. He did not come from like the pure bloods, right? He came from the mixed multitude. Different types of people, different levels of social status. It wasn't just a royal bloodline that he came from. And it wasn't like a pure blood line either. So, true humanity, the child of humanity, and the offspring of the child of humanity. This true generation is renowned in the world. And this is where the attendants of the bridal chamber are. So renowned in the world, like we said, these people, these righteous souls are spread out over the globe, and they incarnate again and again. And they hold the light for the world with their righteousness and with their wisdom and their goodness and their earnest heart to want to be connected fully with God. Now, who are they renowned to? They might not be out in the open in the spotlight drawing attention to themselves, but they're renowned in the upper realms. Like, God knows these people, and the high souls of the upper realms know these people. The angels know these people. Like, in the 99% of reality that we can't see, hear, feel, or touch with our material senses, there's a whole reality that we don't even know, that we can't even perceive fully. So there's beings and entities and spirits that are up there, that are fully aware of who these souls are, and they are renowned in their awareness. And they're known in the upper realms, and they draw down mercy on the world for others. It's like when Abraham was pleading on behalf of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah so that Sodom and Gomorrah wouldn't be destroyed. He was like, well, what if there's 30 righteous souls in the city? Is it worth destroying the whole city if there's 30 righteous souls there? And God was like, well, yeah, you're right. Like, if you can find me 30 righteous souls in Sodom and Gomorrah, I will not destroy it. And he was like, maybe like, what about 20? Like, what if there's 20 righteous souls there? And he was like, all right, find me 20 righteous souls. And he's like, maybe like 10. Can you buy like 10? And he's like, if you find me 10, like, I won't destroy it. And he's like, what about Lot? he was like, my nephew Lot, he's there, his family's cool, like, you can't destroy it. And he's like, okay, well, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna send the angels in, they're gonna go find Lot and his family, they're gonna give them a heads up, they're gonna let them leave, and then they're gonna destroy the city because your family is the only people that are righteous there. So it literally, these people are like holding the line for us, for sure, especially in these days. My God, what is going on? All right, you all, let's read this portion one more time and then we're finished. Like brings forth like. A horse brings forth a horse. Of course, of course. So horses, of course, of course, of course. So a horse brings forth a horse. A human brings forth humans. A deity brings forth deities. So also bridegrooms and brides come from the bridegroom and bride. No Jew, text missing, from Greeks, text missing, from Jews, text missing, to Christians. There was another generation of people, and these blessed people were called the chosen spiritual ones. True humanity, the child of humanity and the offspring of the child of humanity. This true generation is renowned in the world, and this is where the attendants of the bridal chamber are. And who are the attendants of the bridal chamber? Where's the bridal chamber? It's in the seat of the soul, the deepest part of the soul, where the spirit is, where the perfection of our union with God, our pure, untarnished light. That is the part of us that's in the bridal chamber, the innermost concealed part of ourselves. And so that is the part that waits to be reunited with God. And that part of us is waiting because the rest of us, the soul, has to catch up. The consciousness has to catch up. And the attendants of the bridal chamber, that is like our soul and our heart and our consciousness and our mind and our spirit, who are attending this space that we keep, where we're going to have the bridegroom come, and the bride and the bridegroom are going to be in that sacred alchemical marriage. So a horse brings forth a horse. A human brings forth humans. A deity brings forth deities. So also bridegrooms and brides come from the bridegroom and bride. No Jews from Greeks, from Jews to Christians. There was another generation of people, and these blessed people were called the chosen spiritual ones. True humanity, the child of humanity and the offspring of the child of humanity. This true generation is renowned in the world. And this is where the attendants of the bridal chamber are. All right, you all, we will be back together tomorrow. I will do my best to make our Genesis video. If not, we will be reconvening tomorrow night after I come home from work, and I will make our weekly energy oracle forecast. Until then, shalom, shalom. Bye.